from KMA. Before we start our formal proceedings, may I request each one of you to be seated, close your eyes, and pray to Almighty that all good things may happen to all of us present here and all over the world. Thank you once again. Good evening to each one of you. Good evening to our speaker of the evening, respected Mr. V. Ramakrishnan, the CFO at Tata Consultancy Services. All our invited guests, Program Committee Chair, Mr. S.R. Nair, Senior Vice President Nirmala Lilly, Secretary Jomon George, past presidents, Raj Mohan Nair and others whom I cannot see on screen, members of KMA and other LMAs, students and invited guests. Good to see that we have a fairly good attendance already today, and I'm sure it will swell even further as we progress. Today's topic and the speaker are both so compelling that we are sure of this enthusiastic response, as the topic being covered is a very timely and a relevant one, and the day's speaker is one who has such in-depth and unmatched theoretical and practical knowledge to deal with this from all angles, be it technology, business, or finance. Sir, this has been our way of keeping our members engaged and providing with these kind of meaningful deliberations and organizing topical events on a regular basis. In fact, since we started our activities this KMA year, we started in November 2020, we had 10 such LeaderTalks lecture sessions till now, with celebrated leaders from the industry and the academia, and this is the 11th one in the series this far. We also had the Chief Secretary of Kerala coming in for one of the sessions, and also had the Chairman of LIC, Mr. M.R. Kumar, addressing us during one of the sessions. Our KMA Women Managers Forum also has organized 5 separate events till now, and the last one from them was just the last week. Another feature of this year had been the StartCon sessions, an exclusively conceived panel discussion by our Program Committee Chair, past President Mr. Nair, showcasing successful startup entrepreneurs to the KMA fold. We have had 4 such sessions till now, featuring some of the smartest brains of Kerala who have broken into the big league. We'll have the 5th one of the series later this month. These sessions have turned out to be a great platform for these young entrepreneurs to showcase their success stories, and thus giving them an opportunity to reach out to the stalwarts at KMA for getting invaluable guidance and mentoring on their ways forward. In addition to all this, we had 3 panel discussions with our own in-house experts and some of the industry stalwarts on topics of contemporary relevance from time to time. In February, we have had a week-long intellectual feast in the form of a KMA Management Week celebrations, the KMA Virtual Run, the annual Management Students Convention, and the Professor M.V. Piley Memorial Lecture done along with the Management Week celebrations saw unprecedented participation by our members during this pandemic times. They even saw many distinguished speakers addressing us, starting with the All India Management Association IMA President, Mr. Harshpati Singhania, Director General of IMA, Ms. Rekha Sethi, Professor Ranjan Banerjee of SP Jain Institute, Mumbai, Mr. D. Shivakumar of Aditya Birla Group, Dr. Saji Gopinath, the Vice Chancellor of the Kerala Digital University, Mr. Ajay Prasad of Taurus Investment Holdings, leaders from multiple domains explaining the trends ahead for our student members in the convention, and also 3 of the startup heroes of our land sharing their success stories. And in March, we have had the 5th KMA Annual Digital Summit with Mr. Muhammad Y. Safirullah, IAS, the Secretary to the Department of Electronics and Information Technology to the Government of Kerala as a chief guest, and distinguished speakers like Mr. Mitesh Agarwal, CTO of Google India, Mr. Ajit Menon, again of CSO of TCS, Dr. Saji Gopinath, once again our own MC member and the Vice Chancellor of the Kerala University of Digital Science, Innovation and Technology, Mr. Tapan Rai Guru, CEO of Kerala Startup Mission, Dr. Kunjaria Piaisek, Director General of Saim Group, Mr. Rajiv Prakash, CEO of Deshpande Startups, among others, addressing us on various facets of the current digital transformation that is sweeping our businesses and professions. The theme of the summit itself was coined as New Paradigms Progressing Digitally. In addition to all these events, we've also seen the new revamped and recreated KMA News magazine released by our editorial team for the past 5 months. Sir, our issue of December 2020 was brought out as a tribute to the late Sri F.C. Kohli, the founder of TCS and the father of Indian industry, who passed away on 26 November. Among many columns written in respect of the great doyen, one was by Mr. Rajesh Gopinathan, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of TCS. So those are some of the ways in which KMA tried to keep our members updated and in sync with the developments around the world and in our country in particular, while all of us are grappling to have a firm footing in these challenging times. Today, we have yet another very topical session underway when we have one of the most respected personalities in the corporate and professional world and a master on the topic to be covered with his multifaceted professional experience and in-depth domain knowledge. Much has been talked about the swift advent of technology in our lives at every levels and how digital transformation is becoming one of the most important catalysts that's creating the progress in many businesses and professions and even in governments that we see around us now. Technology is not anymore just an enabler of business, it is often the business itself. Digital technologies have become so integral to business models and core processes that no enterprise can ignore them and still remain competitive. Who else knows it better than the jewel of Indian industry and the flag bearer of Asian IT industry, TCS? And when we complete the title for the talk today, as it is coined by the speaker himself, technology as business enabler with focus on finance management, we are indeed so privileged to have got the most respected and accepted authority on this subject, Mr. V. Ramakrishnan, Chief Financial Officer of TCS, to share his in-depth learnings, unmatched expertise, and unparalleled hands-on experience. Straight after announcing a stellar progress report of the company yesterday night, we have him here to address us today. On behalf of the Managing Committee of KMA and all present here, and on my personal behalf, may I extend a hearty welcome to you, sir, Mr. V. Ramakrishnan, to this Leader Talks lecture session.
Thank you.
A warm welcome to all the past presidents present here, members of the Managing Committee and Executive Committee, Senior Vice President, Secretary, members of KMA and other LMAs, student members, members of the media, and all invited guests to this lecture session, which is just about to begin. So without further ado, let me invite our Program Committee Chair and past President, Mr. S.R. Nair, to formally introduce the speaker and also take us through the session, including the Q&A after the talk. Over to you, S.R.
Thank you, Madhav. I'm audible, right, Madhav?
Sure.
Yeah, right. Chairman of the session and President of KMA, Madhav Chantin, very distinguished chief guest of the day, who had, as Madhav had said, just come after announcing the results of the company, Mr. Ramakrishnan, very lovingly and commonly called as Ramki by his colleagues and friends. I would do an introduction of a very, very brief. If you have to really go into an introduction, which is pretty long, which will take time. So I'll go into a very brief introduction of Mr. Ramakrishnan, and then I will let him actually put his thoughts before us. And based on the thoughts, we will do some Q&A and conversations. And during the while, I'll also receive questions from the eminent audience who is in front of me. Your questions may kindly be sent to the chat board. I'll pick it up from there, announce, and please also, your name is of course there. I will announce, recognize you, and I'll put the questions to the distinguished speaker of the day. Now, let me please do the introduction of Mr. Ramakrishnan. Mr. V. Ramakrishnan took up his position as the Chief Financial Officer of Tata Consultancy Services Limited in February 2017. He joined the TCS in 1999 and served as a financial head of the TCS North America for 7 years, where he closely partnered with businesses in the rapid growth of TCS operations in that region. As a CFO, he has been driving financial and operational efficiency, resulting in sustained industry-leading margins, strong cash conversion and effective management of currency exposure. Even that was listed yesterday at about 4.9%. Okay, exposure and other tasks. In his overall professional career spanning more than close to about 39 plus years, he had worked with Tata Motors, Tata Elxsi, and in the consumer electronic industry. Mr. Ramakrishnan is a graduate in commerce from the illustrious and an illustrious alumni of Loyola College, and he had been named one and recognized as one. He is a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He is a member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. He is a member of Institute of Cost Accountants of India, and he is also a qualified CIMA from London. So probably you look at the wide range of qualifications also that he has. Mr. Ramakrishnan has been recognized as the best CFO in the 2019 All Asia Executive Team Surveys by Institutional Investors magazine. Dalal Street Investment Journal ranked Mr. Ramakrishnan as the best CFO in the large cap IT segment or sector in August 2019. I would now hand over to Mr. Ramakrishnan to place the start, and thereafter we will go into conversation. Sir, all yours. Please proceed, sir. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President KMA, Mr. Madhav Chandran, and Mr. S.R. Nair, former president, who has been instrumental in getting me here. If I look back at the history of KMA, it goes back to 1957, the year I was born. And Mr. Madhav Chandran listed a galaxy of speakers and eminent people who have been invited to speak to this audience and in other forums. So I think it's a huge privilege for me to be asked to talk today. I've been fortunate to be associated with an industry and company which has been very, very successful. And so when Mr. Nair reached out, I said, any opportunity to share some of our learnings is always welcome, and no better forum than an organization like Kerala Management Association, where you have people from different industries, different walks of life, associated with industry and commerce, who are members, and I am looking forward to the interactive session for also learning for myself as well. So what I intend to do in the next about half an hour or so, I'll try to be, so I will give a little brief on TCS. I know, see, many companies, we always keep looking at them every day in the news, or all of us have a fair idea, a little, more perceptions than the actual reality. So I will take the liberty of giving a little bit brief of TCS and what has helped it to in this journey. And in fact, it touches upon the fact Mr. Madhav Chandran talked about. Today, technology is at the core of businesses and why it has made a difference. And then I will switch to how technology is helping in financial management itself. And what are the facets of financial management where technology is playing a huge part, and where we have several examples which I can share. So TCS, just for we clocked about $22 billion in revenue this last financial year, and I think there was a question before we started this program as to how many employees we have. We have about 488,000 plus employees as of March, and they are drawn from over 150 nationalities, and we have presence in almost about 50 odd countries, and strong presence in all the major markets, whether it is in the US, Canada, in the European context, in the Western Europe, UK, in the South American countries, and in the Asia Pacific region, and India, as well as in some parts of the Middle East, very, very strong, plus also in South Africa, etc., and in the Australia, New Zealand. So we across the globe, and we provide services in multiple industries. So this is what we are today, right? But if you go back, we have about 53 years or 52, 53 years of history. But if we go back, we did a first $1 million business in 1976. And the first $1 billion business was sometime in the 2003 or so, right? So it took us almost 27 years to cross that, come to 1 billion. But in 2006, I think we crossed about 5-6 billion. Few years later, we crossed 10 billion, then 15 billion, 20, 22. So that has been the progress. But the start of it, especially for practitioners of management, and I'm told there are students of management in this forum as well today, there are 3 or 4 key milestones, especially in the early history, where it can throw some light on how decisions were made, which have a deep impact on the business fortunes of companies. And so let me take a little quick flashback. We formed in 1968 as basically a management and technology consultancy company. In fact, TCS was very strong in management consultancy in those early days for many companies, for many government departments and units, etc. At least for the 20 years, it was quite strong business. Now, it started off as basically a management and technology consultancy company, but for providing services, etc. And I think Mr. Madhavchandran talked about Mr. Kohli. He was a founder and he was a start. And I'm sure you must be having details about him. And what happened was in 1970. It's how did this big company become jump into computer services and then into the export market? There are 2 or 3 milestones markers. 1970, apparently, the Calcutta Electric Supply Company had imported an ICL computer, and it was not being used. It was not being allowed to be used by the unions for what in those days. And so the corporation, being a government corporation, decided that they will auction it, they will sell it off. But the condition was that whoever buys that has to generate export revenue of at least 2 times the value of that computer or whatever it is within the next 5 years. So this was a start of, so TCS got that machine. So this is one area. A few years later, so with that computer, they were doing some services, etc. They were basically trying to build software for accounting applications and some of the activities for within the group companies, etc. A few years later, Burroughs was looking for Burroughs Corporation, which was a huge corporation in the US at that time, was looking for a distributor or somebody who would service their equipments in India and also would be able to support their systems in other countries by writing programs, etc. So that was the start of a relationship. And that grew into a very significant business over the next few years, where we were able to sort of use that to start service. And then we had a first customer in the UK, where we did the full-scale software development. And then in the first independent customer was in the city of Detroit, the police department in the city of Detroit. It's a very interesting factoid. So, but what really happened was after some time, Burroughs said that, look, can we get into a partnership? Can we invest in your company? And at that time, the wisdom of Mr. Kohli and was that, look, if we tie ourselves to one major corporation, then we will not be able to do services for other competitors and other technology companies. So while it would have been very tempting in those days because it would have brought a partner and probably funds, I don't know about that, but he said no. And then what he did was that a separate company, Tata Burroughs, was created, and that company was partnering with Burroughs. But TCS remained as a company which could provide services across agnostic to platforms or products. So this is a key management lesson, because how do you take those decisions? You don't know the future, but he was a visionary and he knew the future. And that was, I think, in a sense, it was a very very important step. And roll back, there are so many decisions, so many things which have happened. But another interesting, somewhere in the mid 90s, one of the key projects which TCS did was the Swiss exchange, securities exchange. We are talking of somewhere in the mid 90s, when still India, late 80s, I would say. But still India, we know where we were in those, and many of us will recall. At that time, to design, create, and implement sort of real-time securities trading platform, both for domestic and internet and cross-border market, and for the Swiss. So this was a $10 million project at that time, but it was a huge piece of work which created a lot of technology strength. I think I must have got the order size wrong. I have to brush my memory on that. But the key thing was, at that time in the late 80s, we did such a project, which was an important one. And then, of course, the Y2K remediation. But what Y2K did was, I think many of you will be aware how that worked, but it was creating a software factory. But what it created was a huge set of customers who saw that we could get this type of work done from companies in India, and particularly TCS, and that opened up opportunities for a lot of other work, right? Customers with whom we had not actually did any business earlier, started off with something in the Y2K remediation area, but opened up new opportunities. This is again, I would say, a lesson in management. So that, and then the rapid growth and so many things, I talked about the numbers. So all this is fine. So today, I think we have to always reflect back on some of those early days, those challenges which they had, etc. But today, what is happening, right? Now, I come to what is a core business today is obviously providing technology-led solutions for business problems. And that is what we do as a living for customers in various sectors and various markets and industries. But the same technology is used extensively internally within the organization. And in every sphere, whether it touches the customer, whether it touches the employee, whether it touches the partners, vendors, suppliers, anything to do with the government, the entire management of the company is on the backbone of this technology. And this is not something which you create in one day or 1 year. This is a multi-year initiatives which have been done over the years. And so when I take customer, right from the entire customer journey, right from the time you prospect to, and the entire life cycle, the pursuit, the contract negotiation, the contract signing, everything in digitized process, whether it employee from when you're identifying resources to person separates at any point of time, the entire life cycle is digitized. So technology is playing a huge part, and some of the digital technologies which we talked about, I think is a very critical element of that. So much so, what are the key results which we see out of this? Right. One, I think I'll quickly turn to some of the financial part of this one. Today, I think both Mr. Madhav and Mr. Nair spoke about, we released the results yesterday. So yesterday was the 12th of April, just 11 days after the close of the financial year, which just ended, and with a $22 billion business. How are you able to do it within? It's not that only we are doing it. There are others in the same industry who are also equally capable and doing it. But what does it mean? One is they are able to understand and report the results of your transactions almost in a real-time, instantaneous basis. And it is not just reporting it. It has to be audited. It has to be validated, is number one. Second is, the more important element is that when you are doing this, you have to take into account the expectations from investors, etc., that there are no surprises. When I say surprises, markets don't like positive or negative surprises of a high order, right? That is an external view. But even internally, how do we drive the entire the ecosystem of the various businesses, the business leaders? How do we make sure that they know what business is generating, they know how profitable it is, whether the levers are working or not, what actions they can take, etc., for which you need in real-time instantaneous information. We can call it a MIS or whatever it is, but you should know the business operation results on a real-time basis for business leaders, business teams. Unless they know that and they are in a position to take corrective action, they are in a position to know what the business will be in a given period of time, whether it's a quarter or a year, we will not be able to give that same level of certainty for an external person. We don't provide specific guidance to the external market, but market gets a fair idea of what you will be doing, which may be accurate to at least about 90-95% confidence level. But you cannot have this one. So, but you cannot do it unless you have it internally. And third is, how do we keep people accountable? Because to do this on a consistent basis uh, and to say who is doing well, who is not doing well, how do we help the people who are not doing well? How do we incentivize behavior based on performance? You need data. Data is the only driver, and data you need to have real time, and you have to use tools on analytics to get insights from the data and the patterns, etc., so that you're able to take those decisions on a timely basis. Third, then of course, employees. Employees also have expectations in terms of all the interactions with them, whether it is their performance, whether it is their entitlements, whether it is their compensation, anything to do with them, you need data again. It comes back to data and how we are able to use that. And you have to drive many things within an organization. You have to make sure that people are abreast with the latest in the technologies or in the field, which means training needs and how do you get the training done is an important area. How do you make sure that everybody is productive, everybody is actually being utilized for the purpose for which they are in the organization. So you have to keep track of how they are using their time, how they are deploying it. Is that being, if it is revenue generating, is it generating the right revenue, etc., etc. Then you take your entire vendor and partner or supplier ecosystem. They respect you if you also are professional in your approach, and that professional in your approach is you do contracting, which you honor and you do it properly, and you make sure that the commitments are met. All that again requires data. And then the huge amount of when you do large operations, you have a huge economies of scale, and you can actually derive a lot of benefits out of that economies of scale. But you can do that only if you know what you are actually spending on and what you are spending in different parts of the organization. So again, the technology plays a huge part. So over the years, what we have done is we have a single instance ERP, if I can call it. I mean, it has morphed into a indigenous system, but it is basically across the operations in various countries, 50 odd countries, multiple, almost 50 subsidiaries, branches. Everywhere we have a single instance ERP, so that the transactions, it's a very integrated platform. So a transaction is recorded only once. So if I make a payment to, say, for something, I have bought a computer, I record that only once. From there, I can track whether this computer is in Kochi, is it in with Dinesh Tampi, whether it is being used for this project, what sort of a project is it, what is the age of that computer, how many years I need to depreciate. Everything flows from that one recording of the transaction. This is a very simple example I gave. So since we have that once recording, then after that, you can slice and dice, you can take analysis in whichever way you want, so that there is no separate MIS. So people who run organizations, commercial organizations, people who have a finance background will understand the moment you have a separate accounting system and a separate MIS system, that is the cause for all the reconciliation and all sorts of time wasting activities. So the MIS actually flows from the accounting, right? And accounting is a science where, it is technical. So, but that technical accounting has to be translated in a very business friendly manner for business managers, for leaders, so that they are able to understand the levers, they are understanding the. So that interface between the accounting system and the reports, that is completely digitized. You have to have dashboards, you use analytical tools. So that is a very important area. And of course, even if we don't have any borrowing, but I think it is very important, including lenders, etc. They also respect where you are able to get the results of your company at any point of time in a very accurate and in a timely fashion. So I think the importance of that financial, technology plays a part. So for instance, in the area of inventory management, we don't have an inventory because our business does not require, but there are so many manufacturing companies, process companies today, especially in the world where physical activities are all completely curtailed and people cannot move around. There are companies who have used technologies like IoT because they can actually do the inventory management without having to physically visit a particular place. So that is a technology which will increasingly become more and more important in terms of this one. Other area where, if you are handling forex, for instance, for us, over 95% of our business is in various international currencies. So we have the translation risk, we have a what you call the transaction risk as well. So every rupee, every dollar, if with the currency change, it has an impact on the business. But how do you keep track of it on a very real-time basis? What actions do you take to manage the impact of that? Again, technology plays a part. So, and many of those systems are built by TCS ourselves. We use our own treasury management platform for that. So this is another area. So I think the areas where technology is enabling us is very significant. What we do for our customers is what we use ourselves, and which is also a huge area where we can get our people directly exposed to many of these. And our own internal IT department is fairly large because we do most all of our work ourselves. We rarely parcel out work to other companies for doing it because we work across technologies, across platforms, and across products. So we are agnostic to it. So what works for the customer, what is the best solution for the customer is what is offered. So we are not worried whether we are doing with multiple competing products. There are separate teams which build their competencies and skills in each of these areas, and we are able to bring it together. So same way that is internally built. I heard Mr. Ajit Menon had spoken. So the areas of the entire security area, for instance, it's only based on technology. So I think this is, I have probably overstated the benefit of technology from enabling in our own financial management in terms of making sure all our stakeholders, whether it is our customers, our employees, our suppliers, the government, has that benefit of timely and correct information in whichever form it is and whichever way it has. So that we have enabled it very strongly. And this has been a multi-year journey. 20 years back, it was very different. And I think over the years, it has significant investments have been made. But today, we are in a good position where we are actually reaping the benefits of many of this. And it's a continuous process. And before I close my formal, I just want to touch upon some of the areas. Whole area of cloud adoption, whether it is in a medium-sized organization or a large organization, the benefits of cloud adoption is very strong because today, if you go back a few years, any system you want to build, you have to invest in your own hardware, the computer software, then you build application over a period of time, etc. And then by the time you have used it for a few years, that either the hardware needs upgradation or the software has become, you need more upgrades, etc. So you continuous process of investment and still you don't have the same level of benefits that you want it to be. Cloud gives you that benefit where you can actually parcel it out, and there will be providers who will host the environment, whether it is the application, whether it is the data, so that it moves from your capex to something of an opex. You say software as a service, you pay per transaction, and you are not investing in all that hardware, etc. upfront, and your ability to take risks is also higher because you have not locked in all your funds. So this is one big area. The area of agile development, and the principles of agile development can be applied in any scenario, in any problem solving as well. And for quickly, very 2-minute explanation of it is, for instance, in the area of software development, the normal practice in the past has been something called a waterfall method. You gather the requirements and then you build the specifications and then start the the development, and then you do testing at various stages, roll it out in stages. So it's a longer process and you can't do mid-course corrections. You have to, if something has gone wrong based on the testing, you have to go back and correct many things and come back. But in Agile, you bring all the players into the same platform, right? It can be a virtual platform, it need not be all together. But the business owner, the product owner, the developer, the tester, all of them are working concurrently. And you can also break down a large project into multiple smaller steps. And then your course correction is easy. You're able to make changes on the fly. So the agile methodology has caught on in a big way. And it's a very, very important step. And as I said, the principles of it can be applied in any other situation of problem solving, not necessarily only a software development, the basic principles. And the other area is in area of analytics, for which the huge amounts of data which is getting generated, the analytic tools which are available to draw patterns, etc. And this whole vaccine development would not have been possible. For instance, if the use of data and technology had not been, because they were able to draw those patterns and we were able to very quickly identify what the markers were in, and we were able to quickly, there's just an example, but it is across the board. The last is the automation. Repetitive tasks and repetitive mundane tasks can be actually taken out, and you can concentrate on more value-adding tasks, and it's a continuous process. You can do a lot of things in that. So I think I will stop here. I don't know whether I have done enough justice to the topic. There are a lot of things which we can talk about, but I would stop here and I would invite questions, because that would probably make it more interesting, and then we'll be able to touch on a few more aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ramakrishnan sir. I think it was, you have been essentially delivering a lecture in completely layman's terms, we haven't heard any jargons coming out of it. Rather, some things like analytics, data, etc. had been there, but otherwise it had all been given, placed before the people in a common man's understanding language. Okay. Before I start the question, I must thank a person who is among us here, who is your friend, Shiv Kumar. He had been listening to you as well for just sitting in Chennai. Shiv, a big salute for connecting. In fact, even Dinesh Thambi did not know that I had actually approached Mr. Ramakrishnan, and later only I went back to Mr. Thambi telling that, look, I have actually got connected to Mr. Ramakrishnan through Shiv, and then that was the way it has happened. Shiv, thank you very much, and I'm sure you're listening, and probably you also maybe I'll be sending you a copy also so that you can send it to your friends, and you have been. You both of you know each other for a long duration of time. I understand. Okay, that's what. So, sir, you have generally touched upon all the aspects, beginning with ERP, slicing and dicing of the data, dashboard, analytics, IoT, forex management, and going into cloud adoption. In fact, it's one of the wisest advice that you're given, particularly. But at the same time, in our MSME scenario, the cloud adoption has not been done, particularly in the family managed businesses. We don't see this happening at all. So it is time that people went into that. We have to actually discuss about that. I have one or two questions before I take questions from the audience. Such a big company, you said about people of 100 nationalities, having centers at about 50 different countries, close to about, at that point in time, about 4.5 lakh people, okay, etc. And then suddenly the COVID hits, the country locks down, the world locks down, okay. And then such an effortless manner in which you had actually gone into the changeover, getting your people to work at home, and then showing that as a result yesterday. In fact, saying that, okay, you have grown much better than, in fact, if I look at the number, last year it was 1,56,949 crores, and this year it has been 1,64,177 crores. So you have grown as well, and adding, as you rightly said in the beginning, 40,000 people in the growth for this year. Now, how did you manage this transition without affecting the system much and without hitting your revenue and profitability? Will you be able to tell us some?
It's a very important question, and I think a lot of lessons from there, and I'm sure for years to come, I think this will be a very important milestone. I think the whole pandemic, actually the seriousness of it in India at least, and the lockdowns, etc., started only in the third week of March, right? And Eastern, I mean, if you look at countries in the Asia Pacific region, they had started in January, February to some extent, but the major markets and India, etc., was in March. So immediately, what was the immediate concern? So how do we? There are three elements. One, once the seriousness of this pandemic was realized, the safety and well-being of employees. So that was number one. Second is that how do we completely be able to work in a remote manner, that people have to work from home. Third is how do we ensure that whatever commitments we have made to our customers, that there is no drop in the services which are provided, and it is to the same high quality, and we deliver on the projects. So these were three important things. And of course, when you say safety and well-being, of course, there is a level of communication. But the initial stages, not many people were affected. But to make sure that, and many people, because of the lockdown, they started moving out from the base locations. They went back to native towns, and etc., etc. Right? But the major part of it was how to enable the working from home. That means people who have been 100% working from a physical location, many of them on desktops. How do you suddenly make sure that they are all working from home? So huge logistic exercise in moving their desktops, etc., home. And the more important, it's just not getting it there, but to enable the security environment, the development environment, so that they are the connectivity and all those. I think that within a space of about 10 days, we were able to get almost 95% of the total workforce into that mode. There are a few days of disruptions, but 95% within about 10 days. So that was a massive exercise involving a lot of departments, and it was not an easy task, but it was done. The third important element was to continue to provide services to the customers, And that is where I think the big difference came, because customers were also affected. So many of them were also affected, and in the sense that they were also moving into this virtual working mode. But to make sure that the projects are delivered, and that is what I think the bringing together the entire uh, uh, whatever we have been able to do. And if we, when we look back, we said that, some of it had started even a few years back. Number one, I talked about agile, and I'm glad that I brought it up a little earlier. We were actually pioneering something called a location independent agile. And when I talked about agile, I said that basically instead of bring everybody together on a common platform, and the customer is sitting in some overseas location, some of the teams themselves are scattered in either closer to the customer or in development centers in India. So this agile methodology itself was enabling people in a distributed environment to work together in a fashion. So it was location independent. So this is something which we pioneered, and the last 3-4 years we had been successfully doing it with multiple customers. So when the pandemic broke, and then we were making people were working from home, it was just an extension of that same logic. Because
Okay.
earlier, if you have a project of 100 people, and they are working out of 5 locations, let us say, average of 20 people in one location, just to make it simple. Today, the 100 people are working from 100 locations. So what you were doing out of 5 locations has now become 100 locations.
Yes.
That is the only difference. So the same location independent agile principles followed here, and we were able to do that. Now, from a customer satisfaction perspective, we were extremely delighted. By month of May or June, we had 500 plus communications from customers. They said that you helped us during this journey. You helped us to respond to the situation and to carry on our activity. There are a lot of mission critical activities,
Yes.
banks, insurance companies who have surge in claims, surge in inquiries. So every retail customers, essential retail suddenly saw a spurt in activity, because people were buying things for stocking. Pharmacy companies or pharma companies, they saw an activity increase. Hospitals, so there were segments which are seeing an increased level of activity. So it is not just to even keep your current level of activity, but you have to cater to that increased level of activity. And many of those, some of those testimonials which we got, we published in our last annual report, which came out in May of 2020. So that was the demonstration. I think so in doing all this, I think I'll make one more comment and close here for this question. The key thing again goes back to data and technology. See, when you have to know exactly every project, at what stage it is, what are the parameters for quality, how is it being monitored, is it going up, is it coming down, and also safety and well-being. We have to reach out to people, keep engaged with them, and we had to, over the months, we had to do a lot of help in terms of counseling, in terms of medical assistance. Data has played a huge part, and technology backing the data, and which you are able to and take decisions quickly, take decisions correctly. You can do it based on data rather than on hunch or guesswork.
Yes.
And all of us know that, but it's a clear demonstration that the data helps you to do that better. I do hope, in the interest of time, I would like more questions.
Right.
I do hope
It was a phenomenal effort, and then you changing over in the 10 days time and see that, okay, the services are rendered, and then the client calling you back and saying that you have helped them sail through all these difficulties. You started with actually giving a lot of reverence to Mr. Fakir Chankoli, or FCK, the father of Indian IT industry. In fact, when we entrepreneurially, when we discuss about risk in entrepreneur is always defined by the risk term. But here is a case of uncertainty, and then even over and above that, unknown. Actually, when he really went into this computing and your ICL story, and thereafter, if you look at it, he was actually catching the unknown, not even an uncertain things, an unknown thing. and which is normally called as effectuation in entrepreneurship. Effectual, it is called as effectual. The other thing being cost oriented. Now, in this effectual entrepreneur, the funny part is he was not even an entrepreneur, he was an intrapreneur. Mr. FCK was an intrapreneur, not even an entrepreneur. I think this can happen only in an environment like Tata's. Nowhere else that you will see such a thing to happen. Absolutely great story. I think case studies after case studies could be made after him. I really do not know how much that much of reverence the Indian management has actually given to FCK. That I think there had been some gap in exposing, and he never wanted publicity. On the other side of it, he never wanted publicity. So a lot of what he did actually went down without people being seen. In the age of social media, somebody else would have been always plugging all over the place with the achievements that he has actually done. So the other question that I wanted to ask is about you said while you were conversing, you said about managing customers conflicting, because you have clients who have conflict. If you 2 or 3 clients, they may have conflicting businesses within. And how do you manage these clients of conflicting businesses within and give them the level of trust and response? Will you be able to highlight on that, sir?
I think there are 3 or 4 elements. I think this is part of the entire technology ecosystem.
Yes.
With the same 2 organizations, you have multiple relationships, multiple hats.
Yeah.
You're a customer, you're a vendor, you're a supplier, you're a partner, you're a go-to market partner. So multiple relationships. This has been there. It is not very unique. I think there are 3 or 4 elements which come into it. Number one, I think recognition of that you have to trust implicitly that you will maintain that client confidentiality. You will not use what you have learned from one customer with a different customer. You can use the principles, but you cannot use specific information. So first of all, there is a trust. So if the trust is broken, then you will not be able to do this business. So and the history is there with examples of where the trust has been broken. But in large parts, I think that trust has been maintained. But trust alone cannot be sufficient. So you will have to have strong contracting clauses which protects both sides, right? That you are able to protect your intellectual property, your trade secrets, your business processes, etc., so that it is not given away to somebody else. And at the same time, you are also protected from acts which are not due to negligence or misfeasance, but more due to so there are whole list of things which can be contractually also brought down. But contracts are good, but they are good as long as there are no disputes, right?
Yes.
So the disputes can be avoided if you deal with in a atmosphere of fairness and also keep that trust which I talked about. And the third element is, I think there is a business opportunity where you have these multi relationships, multi characterizations, because I think it brings a lot of value. For instance, there are technology players who, for whom we provide services in the development of their products, in the development of their services, in how they manage their customer ecosystem. We play a part. Second, but we also buy from them because it is also required for our own businesses, right? So we are a buyer of those. Third, since we are in a position to work with them on their product development, on their services strategy, we have a good insight into that particular product in a very high degree of knowledge,
Yes,
which we are able to take to provide services for other customers, where you are building products, building solutions based on that particular technology. So that is also a win-win situation.
right.
Then fourth is, because you have a set of customers in multiple industries, you can take the benefit of this relationship with this technology partner to take them to your customer set and vice versa. So I think there are a number of win-win relationships in this, and by and large, with some few exceptions, customers understand that you will work with multiple players. Some of them may be their competitors. And sometimes in many situations, they are also willing to share their success stories, their how this particular partner, which is us, have been able to deliver certain solutions which has made a big impact for them. They are willing to share it with their own competitors as well in forums like where we get all of them together or some of them together, or even if it's a request, they are willing to do that. And I think that ecosystem has worked, and it's a maturity of the industry also over the years. But I think the underlying thing is trust. And if you break the trust, then you will not be successful. I think you have to keep that very strong.
Well said, sir. Actually, you are saying that actually the maturity has been achieved by the trust that you generated and built it up. Absolutely, very good. So now I will take some questions from the audience.
Sure.
We have a question from Mr. Bahura, who is part of our managing committee, and he's a head of HR at Petronet LNG. He was asking the question that petroleum, so like data is called as the oil. Data is called as the oil today, and he says the oil prices fluctuate. So in the future, will data prices fluctuate? It's a funny question, but how do you want to answer it?
Yeah, I think, see, data itself has the strength that it is being monetized. See, we don't know it. When you actually go and go to, I'm just using Amazon as an example. You go and click and look at something which you want to buy or which you are interested. I think there is software which is tracking. It may be anonymized. So they may not know that you are the person doing it, but they know that, okay, this particular product is evincing so much interest, and that is being sold by Amazon to somebody else. So data is something which has commercial value, and so that is what brings in the whole area of areas of whom does that data belong to, right? Okay. And then what about data privacy? Then in terms of what happens to the data when it moves across borders, who has the ability to tax that transaction? So there are multiple elements which are arising from that. And so data is today being priced. For instance, both legitimately and illegitimately.
Illegitimately, yes.
Why is hacking, etc. happening? Because somebody who's getting all those credit card numbers is selling them on the dark web. So that is an illegitimate way, but legitimately also there are the examples, several examples of how that data is being. For instance, I think there is a recent very interesting story about the whole area of geostatic information in India. GIS information, which was being sold only to one party, and there was a lot of issues. Why was it being given only to one party? And there were a lot of issues, and I won't get into it. If you search for it in the last few days, there has been a news item on it. So I think data is definitely monetizable, and it will be priced. It is already being priced.
Yes.
And it will continue to be.
Yes. Bahura Sahab, you have your answers, I understand. I have another question on artificial intelligence. Before coming to that, there's a question for Suresh Kumar TK. He's asking, quantum computing is going to impact very much in the development of computer technology, and how TCS view this as especially indigenization of the same. Typically, quantum computing, how TCS is viewing from an indigenization perspective is a question from Suresh Kumar sir.
Unfortunately, I'm not that level of a technical knowledge person, so I don't want to venture into something which I don't know much about. But I know for sure that our own CTO organization, our own research and innovation group is definitely working on some of those areas. Of course, if your participant is more interested, I can put him in touch with our Chief Technology Officer office, and they can provide some answers to it. But I think very interestingly, when I said of research and innovation, it goes to the foresight of Mr. Kohli, that almost years back, we started something called the TRDDC in Pune, that are Research Development Center. This whole area of computer-aided software engineering. And we are talking of 40 years back. The entire area, and TRDDC was a forerunner for so many products and platforms which TCS has themselves built. and into foundational research, etc. Quantum computing, I'm sure we are doing a lot of work. I've heard about it, but I unfortunately I don't know much about it, so I don't want to venture it.
Right, sir. Appreciate, sir. I think your frankness is very well appreciated. This question comes from an entity called Galaxy Tab, so I don't know the person behind it. But the question he had asked is, what role will artificial intelligence play in financial planning and decision making?
I think what is to break it down, what is artificial intelligence? It is basically mimicking human, right?
Yes.
If you are able to, you are able to look at something, understand, and react to it. You are asking machines to do that in a sense, to almost mimic human behavior. And so, essentially, AI is coming in different forms. It is still perhaps not mainstream, but it will come, and you can use the benefits of AI in building the applications, which basically in terms of pattern recognition, right?
Yeah.
Or in terms of making those almost human intelligent decisions. And for instance, areas where if there are repeated failures in a particular process, you can use that data to understand from that as to what is happening. How can you actually predict the next failure? What, if it is possible, self-diagnose and even correct it, and then also prevent in the future. So all this is possible through technologies like that. Of course, it has its own challenges. For instance, facial recognition is one form of AI, and there are critics of it because it infringes on data privacy, individual privacy, and individual rights. So some of those challenges are going to be there. But with every technology, every new thing, there will be pluses and minuses. But I think in the years to come, from my own reading of what it is, this will become mainstream. But today, I don't think it is.
Understand, sir. Okay. This question is from a person who is part of your company, and she is asking this question. That is, IT companies actually the investment should go into the IT companies, and they should have been bullish. So how come all these IT companies are bearish now?
I don't think IT companies are bearish. Actually, if you look at it for the last few months, I think it has been seen as a sector where, because of the same factor that technology is making that huge difference
Yes.
For companies and industries, and even in the management of this pandemic, actually technology has played a significant part, whether it is in health or in public services or in managing change. So people are seeing the benefits of it and seeing that, okay, this is something which is going to be here. And we certainly believe that we are on a multi-year technology cycle. And I think it has been bullish. You should not worry about day-to-day gyrations, because that's all part of there could be multiple reasons. Some people see valuation. Say people think that the upside of a particular sector or a stock may not be much. It is already priced sufficiently, so such things can come.
Okay.
Some things sometimes people say that, okay, there is a huge dip, now go and buy other stocks. So if I am going to buy other stocks, come out of one stock and buy. So day-to-day gyrations one should not worry about. And I think it has been on a bullish run. And how it continues, etc., none of us are pundits to predict on that, and I don't want to venture. Anyway.
So, Sarika, you got the message. Don't worry. Keep on investing in the tech stocks. Actually, okay. This is the last question. This is the last question for the day. This question comes from Jairaj Kulangana, who himself is a financial professional, actually, and a CFO of one of the companies in the zone. So his question is, what is your views over the documentations demanded by various government bodies like customs, etc.? And is there any effort from TCS to make it more paperless and efficient? For example, export and import documentation. You have any comment to make, sir?
I think it's a very important one. We do work with many of these large departments as well, both in the direct taxes and the indirect taxes. We have been very strong in some of the large public services, and I think passport, I think everybody in the country knows that area. I think in our previous, the entire railway reservation system was done by CMC, which CMC was acquired by TCS in 2003 or 2004. But that is a landmark. And TCS has been involved in, for instance, the NSC, the NSDL, they were all created. The entire systems were created those days. So I think we have been keenly involved in many of the landmark mission critical products. But we, at the same time, while in the process of developing some of these systems, building the systems, we will bring in some of the technology aspects and what are the best practices, what is the best way to do it. Ultimately, some of the other decisions will be with the user department. It is with any customer as well. While we can bring what we have known from other situations, I'm sure, but to your question, it's very broad. So our role is to make sure that technology brings the best of the solution for issues and simplification, standardization, rationalization, and to make it easy for various stakeholders is fundamental to that. And technology can provide the solutions and we'll bring that. But it requires two hands to clap. And whether it is a government or whether it is a private sector customer, I think that ability to absorb that and to make sure that we are able to drive some of these objectives. It is we can bring technology and we can give those solutions, and we have to work together and to get that. So I'm sure we must be working on some of those. I'm not personally aware of it. We do work with the CBIC as well. So I don't know the extent of what we do, but we are engaged with some of these departments as well.
Sir, thank you very much. You have been speaking for more than 55 minutes. I don't know if you realized actually. Okay, and we didn't know how the time went by. Thank you so very much. It has been, we're all immensely pleased by your presence, and we also very, very glad to join you in your happiness of having announced another best year results as far as TCS is concerned. Okay, I would now hand you back to Mr. Madhav Chintan, our president. Madhav, all yours.
Thank you so much, SR. As you rightly said, Ramakrishnan sir, made this lecture so very simple with a straight from the heart kind of a conversation. In fact, when we all used to work at TCS, we used to treat TCS as a school, like school of managers who are coming out in the IT domain. Now, as far as activities are concerned, though from a perspective of a supplier or a customer, whatever is happening in TCS is what is being copied by other organizations. I mean, not only the IT provided by TCS, but the way in which the systems are being put in place, that is what is happening. And that is exactly what we heard today. In a very, very eloquent manner, he just explained in a very, very nutshell as to how we have been doing it in TCS and how others can also emulate that, the security aspect of it, the systems aspect of it, the trust part of it, all those things which are the pillar and the cornerstones of the success which TCS is named after. And wonderful, sir. It is really a privilege listening to a person like you with so many decades of experience, and that too, when you have just taken TCS to a different milestone altogether, and listening to you from close quarters is indeed a privilege for all of us present here in this KMA platform today. Wonderful, and thank you so much once again. I'm sure our secretary will offer the formal vote of thanks, but I must personally thank you for being here when I am the president and giving such a very simple and eloquent lecture on how the success story called TCS was made in just about 40 minutes time. You explain what matters as far as success is concerned to TCS, not just money, but the systems which are in place and the trust of all the parties the environment is concerned. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for this privilege of addressing you, and I do hope you found it engaging and useful.
Indeed.
I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. It was really good. I'm sure the quality of the crowd which was present there, each one of them. I can see Dr. Keswasamy sitting there.
Oh,
I can
okay.
see many of them who have come in, to listen to you. As sir was mentioning in the chat box, the quality of the audience was very, very
very high order. Very high
quality audience was there today, because KMA, the news go to all kinds of people, but then they choose the right sessions to come and attend. We have got 2,000 plus members, sir. So those who are coming in are the ones who are actually interested in listening to the speaker and the relevant topic which is being mentioned. So today was one of those high quality audience which we had. And thank you so much, audience, also for being there with such discipline and listening to the stalwart like Mr. Ramakrishnan. Thank you, sir. Before I hand over to our secretary, let me just tell you we have 2 more sessions already lined up for this month, more being lined up. We have another Leader Talk session coming up on 21st April, that is the next week, from Mr. Anil Kumar. Anil Kumar is the Managing Director of SCG Automotive India, Bangalore. He is going to talk on the topic business transformation. It's all transformation happening, and he is a stalwart as well. Mr. Anil Kumar, the Managing Director of SCG Automotive India, going to talk on the topic business transformation. And we have the first of our executive development programs happening on 29th April, an EDP on a topic, Ikigai. This is to increase the productivity and boost our own morale and confidence and finding answers to the reasons for our own living. A very, very interesting workshop based on the best-selling book, Ikigai by Francis Morales and Hector Garcia. This book and our program will change the mindset of many executives to become more productive in their profession and life while having the highest level of happiness and satisfaction in doing what they're doing. An online masterclass being taken by our own past president, S.R. Nair. It's a paid program to restrict entries to around 50 only. Registration charges would be rupees 300 per delegate and first come, first served. This is on 29th of April. Details will be coming to you very soon. Please keep looking at your WhatsApp and email messages and register yourself well in advance. Thank you so much. And let me invite our Honorary Secretary, CA Jomon George, to offer the formal vote of thanks. Jomon.
Good evening to all of you. President Madhav Chandran, Program Committee Chair S.R. Nair, and a very, very learned, eloquent, ornamental speaker of this evening, Ramakrishnan sir, fondly and respectfully, Ramki for all TCS and for all of us now at KMA, past presidents, especially Dinesh Thambi, who is part of the head of TCS in Kerala, the other delegates. Once again, good evening to all of you. It was really nice after a long time to have such kind of a different perspective, a different session, and from a person whom I feel personally so excited, so happy to be sharing the screen with the CFO, I would say the finance head of TCS, one of the world's most respected companies. The company has made the country proud, and today, from the very simple, modest narration that you have made, it's clear you are so passionately narrating the evolution of TCS, the story of TCS, how it's evolved over the years, from the 1 million to the 1 billion, and then then reaching up this 22 billion that we are today at the top line, and with good margins. And most importantly, the ethical culture, which is very important, which is part of the Tata's culture, which transcends all contractual agreements and commitments. And we are clear that the success of TCS and in the futuristic outlook, everything that is mainly because of the agility which you highlighted. In being agile is very important because many other organizations are becoming fragile. So sans if we are agile, and so the continuous endeavor to catch up with the changing customer needs is what keeps TCS ahead in the race, and the values we attach to the people in TCS, safety and comfort of people when they're working from home and a very short span of time. That's a great example of transformation. Every organization, big and small, should try to imbibe. And as also President also highlighted, all this without the slightest, with an iota of trust deficit and all that's being done. So a great organization, a great leader, and wonderful session covering all the important aspects and how technology confining to areas of your competence and their, saying certain questions are not your domain. That itself is proof that, core competence is key to everything that you are today. So KM is really proud, happy, accomplished that we could have stalwart, your glittering presence this evening. We would have really loved to have it physical. We would have a larger crowd, sir, but then not on the Zoom platform, but there's a huge number of seeing on YouTube online live, and then probably recorded versions would surely be there. So that's a great participation also this time. Credit goes to the speaker, his stature, and the topic that we have selected this evening. So once again, a big thank you on behalf of all of us here for that very enlightening session. And as a chartered accountant, since you wish me for my further journey in the profession, I would only request you to enhance your connect with the institute, not for you, it's for the institute.
Sure.
Because we need, we at sometimes feel that we need a visionary, lack of visionary leadership there. So your experience, unparalleled experience, your visionary thoughts can really revolutionize an institute like ICA, with whom I'm sure TCS is also working closely within the self-service portal and things like that. So that's a humble request. That's a humble request from a concerned professional, a fellow professional that you are. And in Chennai, when I used to do my articles in Chennai, so CA, CW, SRG said member of CA Institute, SCW Institute, and CS Institute. So we call him triple qualified. And top of that, Seema from London is something which really rare, and that is really been part of such an organization, a journey that made us a country proud, and every one of us. So thank you so much, sir. We would like to have a stronger connect from you and your organization to KMA in all that we endeavor to do in the spirit of entrepreneurship. And this year, our theme for this year is spearheading responsible management. So that from that theme as a perspective standpoint as well, that your session has thrown new light on a lot of areas. So thank you so much, sir. Seeking your blessings for all our activities. On behalf of all of us here, once again, a very, very big thank you, deep sense of gratitude from all of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have a specially curated memento, which the president is very passionate about displaying on the screen, but which physically will reach you also, despite the pandemic. So, Prajit, can you just display it on the screen for sir?
It's a very special.
Yeah, it is real time, sir. You have been here.
Wow.
You have captured real time.
You have no escape. We have proof that.
It'll come to you by courier, sir. It'll reach you very soon.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much, sir. And to SR, as usual, for seamlessly coordinating the session, editing those questions and making it brief and within the time we had. And as you rightly said, 55 minutes of continuous interaction, a lot more of interaction than your talk. So that really made a huge difference. Thank you, sir. That has been wonderful. Thank you, President, for coordinating and for that very, I would say that giving the highlights of this year's for a person like Ramki sir. Very important to know that what KMA means business, and in spite of the difficulties, quite like TCS, we are also keeping our members, and more importantly, you also mentioned about management students connected and engaged with the latest possibilities, as you mentioned. So as I quoted yesterday, so you will continue to invest in people and your capabilities. So congratulations for the wonderful result also that has come out, and I'm sure that year after year is going to be better. So thank you, sir, once again. And to the Secretariat, Jojo, Prajit, and Padmagumar, all of you there for the wonderful coordination, making all this, putting all these elements together. So have a great evening. COVID is not gone. Let's stay safe, stay focused. And as Ramki sir would like to say, that stay determined and looking into the future. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary Jamon George, and thank you all for being there and